Ignacio Bahamondes and Calvin Gastelum came through for us last week. Unfortunately, the one dog that I did throw into there, Gerald Mearshart, did not. And that was a lot more frustrating considering the fact that Christian Rodriguez and Rob Font, two other dogs that I was quite confident in, ended up coming through without too much of a hiccup. Christian Rodriguez was a little bit of a sweat, but I trusted his veterancy and he was able to come through. Unfortunately, I did not pick him for the Locky Trinity, so the Locky Trinity blows up in our face. But this coming week, I got three solid favorites to put together for you guys to bring us back a solid return for the Locky Trinity for UFC Kansas City, and hopefully we're able to cash them. Before I get into it, I just want to quickly plug the fact that PFL Week 3 goes down this week, and there's a lot of solid favorites that we can throw into parlays as well. The only place you can find those breakdowns for me are on the Patreon. Link in the description below. Not just PFL, but we also got LFA going down on Friday, Cage Warriors going down on Saturday, and Fury FC going down on Sunday. All breakdowns for every single one of those matchups will be found on the Patreon, link in the description below. All right, without further ado, let's get right into the Locky Trinity. The first leg is going to be women's MMA. Don't worry, I feel pretty damn good about this spot, even though the line movement does not seem to agree with me. We got Bruna Brasil, who was earlier in the week around that minus 230 range. She's roughly sitting around that minus 180. You could even probably find her around that minus 160 range, depending on your bookie. Now, the whole narrative around this week in terms of why so many people are jumping on the Denise Gomez bandwagon seems to be because of the takedown defense flaws in Bruna Brasil's game. However, if you look through the progression of her career and see how much better she is getting in terms of working back to her feet, creating scrambles, and then either reversing the position or getting back to her feet where she does her best work, people seem to be overlooking that aspect, right? Denise Gomez is mainly a striker who looked to grapple a lot more in her last fight against Loma Lukbunmi, but even when she was able to establish some certain positions, we saw Lukbunmi pretty much reverse those positions very easily, either working to get back on top or eventually back to her feet where she felt she had the advantage, although the majority of that fight took place in the grappling realm. Brasil is going to be enjoying a 4-inch height advantage here as well as a reach advantage that I can't recall off the top of my head, but I know that strength advantage is going to come into play huge here, which will allow her to get out of these bad positions, out of the Gomez's grappling heavy approach that she'll likely be taking in this matchup. But a lot of people are forgetting that Gomez is more so a striker. She is not as comfortable on the mat as most fighters have been, and I think that's going to cause her troubles in terms of establishing that dominant position, which will allow the stronger fighter in Brazil to scramble, get back to her feet, and utilize that height and reach advantage she's going to have to use that aggression against Gomez and land the better strikes and possibly even knock her out. I feel pretty good about this, and again, line movement doesn't agree with me, but I truly believe that this is the better spot, and people are a little bit blinded by the takedown heavy approach that Gomez might be able to take here. I get it, she's aggressive on the feet, but she's going to get picked apart by the cleaner striker, in my opinion, in Bruna Brasil. So she is the first leg of our Locky Trinity. Second leg is going to be Mr. Chris Gutierrez, who's in a bit of a passing of the torch spot here against Pedro Munhoz, as both guys are heavy calf kickers, but I think that Chris Gutierrez does a better job of implementing the rest of the MMA game, specifically with his movement and utilizing his hands behind his strikes. Not just his hands, but more crisper, cleaner strikes down the pipe compared to the stalking, wild winging hook style of Pedro Munhoz. Munhoz is getting up there in age, and obviously we can see within his recent form that he's really starting to slow down and letting these losses start to stack up. And even though he had a great first round against Sean O'Malley, we know that Sean O'Malley was just downloading the data, and it seemed to be changing in terms of the momentum in that second round, which is when that unfortunate eye poke happened and Sean O'Malley and that fight ended up going to a no contest. But Chris Gutierrez is a master striker as well, from utilizing that calf kick perfectly to switching stances when he needs to, throwing his hands when he needs to as well. I know his coach, Mark Montoya, is salivating at the mouth for a potential matchup like this, considering the ranking of Pedro Munhoz as well as how he stylistically matches up against his guy Chris Gutierrez. So I really like Gutierrez in this spot to outstrike and outvolume Pedro Munhoz en route to a decision victory. And then finally, we're going to go to the main event here, as the blessed one, Max Holloway, should be able to pick up where he left off whenever he's not fighting fighting somebody named Alexander Volkanovski, as I think his volume-heavy approach is going to be too much here for Arnold Allen. Now, I expected Calvin Kattar to be the guy to stop this run that Arnold is on. However, that injury that occurred at the ending of the first round stopped us from seeing how that fight could have truly played out. And I get it. Some people are going to be like, hey, Arnold Allen won that first round. What are you talking about? But we know how fights start to progress and how they start to go on, just as it did in the Arnold Allen and Sodiq Yusuff fight. Arnold did enough to win in the first 2 rounds, but in that 3rd round, it was all Sodiq Yusuff, just as I expect this fight with Max Holloway to be all Max Holloway, rounds 3 through 5, although I expect Max Holloway to even potentially find a finish in rounds 4 or 5 by overwhelming the slowing down and exhausted Arnold Allen. What Allen is good at is he finds his moments and gets his barrage of strikes off, which is what he was able to do against Calvin Kattar in the first round of their matchup, but I expect those to come few and far between in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th rounds until Max is inevitably able to find that stoppage. So there you guys go. 3 legs for the Locky Trinity. I got it at plus 227 earlier this week. Like I said, the Bruna Brasil line movement is not agreeing with me, so you can currently find that parlay at plus 234 on FanDuel. Once again, Bruna Brasil, Chris Gutierrez, and Max Holloway. Good luck to you folks, and I'll see you guys again tomorrow for the 3 best prop bets.